"I was that baby," said the 20-year-old waiter. "The woman dropped her coffee." What would you do if a stranger looked you in the eye and said something so impossible, so precise? It knocked the air out of your lungs. Would you believe them, or would you freeze? It was late afternoon in Charleston, South Carolina, that sleepy golden hour where the shadows get long and everyone's just trying to get through the day. The cafe on the corner of Ashford Street was full but quiet, a place where people came for comfort. Brick walls, soft jazz on the speakers, and the smell of cinnamon rolls that clung to your clothes. A woman in her mid-50s sat alone at a window table. Her name was Margaret Klein. Pearl earrings, navy cardigan, and a wedding ring she never took off, even after everything. She stirred her coffee slowly, like someone who had a lot on her mind but no one to say it to. Her eyes drifted to the window, but they weren't really looking out. Not at the street, not at the people. Somewhere else entirely. Across the cafe, behind the counter, a young man in a plain white apron was wiping down tables. Tall, lean, maybe 20 at most. His name tag said Caleb. His hair was tucked under a backwards cap, sleeves rolled up just enough to show the edge of a faded tattoo on his forearm. He moved quietly, like someone used to being overlooked. But his eyes, they didn't miss a thing. Margaret didn't notice him. Not really. Not until he stepped forward, hesitated, and walked toward her with a slow, careful calm. Like he had rehearsed this in his head 100 times and still wasn't sure if he'd actually do it. He stood beside her table. Didn't speak right away. Just looked down, studying her face like he knew it better than his own. She glanced up, startled. Coffee cup paused halfway to her lips. Then he said it. Soft. Clear. Just above a whisper. "I was that baby." The cup slipped from her hand, shattered on the floor. Every head in the cafe turned. But Margaret didn't even flinch, because the moment she heard those words, she already knew. She stared at him, frozen, not out of fear, but out of memory. Her breath hitched the way it does when a forgotten photo resurfaces in a dusty drawer. Her lips parted slightly, like they were reaching for a name she hadn't spoken in 20 years. Her fingers trembled, still hovering over the shards of her coffee cup on the floor, yet she didn't move to clean them. Didn't blink, didn't breathe. Caleb didn't move either. He didn't try to explain, didn't smile, just stood there with the posture of someone who carried more weight than his shoulders were meant to bear. He looked older than 20, not in his face, but in his eyes, the kind of eyes that had seen too much, too soon. There were faint freckles across his cheekbones and a scar along his jaw that looked like it had a story of its own. Behind him, the cafe noise slowly resumed, plates clinking, espresso steaming, quiet murmurs. But around Margaret and Caleb, there was only silence, a stillness that felt sacred. Margaret finally blinked. Once, then twice. Her eyes glistened but didn't fall. She looked at Caleb like someone peering through time. How do you know?" she whispered, the words barely escaping her throat. Caleb nodded once, slow and heavy. "Because I've been looking for you. For years. And today, when I saw your hands shaking over that sugar packet, I remembered." He reached into the pocket of his apron and pulled out a tiny wrinkled photo. Edges curled, colors faded. A photo that had survived rain, moves, foster homes, and decades of silence. Margaret's hand flew to her mouth. Her breath caught again. Because in that photo, tiny, wrapped in a hospital blanket, eyes shut tight and mouth mid-cry, was a baby she hadn't seen since the worst day of her life. Her baby. The one she was told had died. Caleb didn't rush her. He didn't press or prod. He simply placed the photo gently on the table beside her coffee-stained purse, then took one step back. Margaret stared at it like it might vanish if she blinked too fast. Her hand hovered, unsure, until finally she touched the corner of the photo as if afraid it might burn her. I I buried my baby, she murmured, voice cracking like old paint. They told me he didn't make it, that there were complications. Her words trembled under the weight of years she'd spent convincing herself not to question. Who are you? Caleb's jaw tightened. He swallowed hard, then softly. I was adopted 2 weeks later by a woman in Ohio. Never knew anything until I turned 18 and found the report. A nurse's note. It said a baby was listed as deceased, but the body was never released. No funeral. No trace. She looked up at him sharply, the pain flashing behind her eyes like lightning. Why would someone lie about that? I don't know, Caleb replied, voice low but steady. But I know this. He motioned toward the photo, then tapped his chest. I've had this photo since I was 5. I don't know how I got it. My adoptive mom said I'd hide it under my pillow like a secret, like I was waiting. Margaret blinked hard. Her fingers clutched the edge of the table now, knuckles white. You think I'm your mother? He hesitated, just a beat, then nodded. No, I know you are. The words hung in the air, impossibly heavy and impossibly gentle. People walked, passed. Coffee cups clinked. But time felt suspended in that moment between them, and then Caleb said the thing that made her heart stop. I'm not here to ask for anything. I'm not mad. I just needed to find you. Because for 20 years I felt like half a person. I thought maybe, if you were still out there, you might want to know. I lived. I made it. And I forgive you. She stared at him. This boy with a name she never knew, yet whose face felt achingly familiar, and for the first time in 2 decades, she exhaled. The impossible was not only standing in front of her, it was offering peace. Margaret didn't speak for a long time after. That, not a word. She just sat there, shoulders stiff, coffee untouched, her hands clasped in her lap like she was afraid they might betray her emotions if she let them move too freely. Caleb didn't interrupt the silence. He let it stretch, respectful, but with eyes that quietly pleaded, please say something, anything. Finally, her voice broke the quiet, rough, raw. You can't just show up and expect me to believe it. You understand that, don't you? Caleb nodded slowly. Yes, ma'am. I wouldn't either, if I were you. She looked up at him sharply, the words too calm, too measured. She'd expected outrage. She didn't know why. Maybe because deep inside she wanted to be angry, because if she let herself believe him, and it wasn't true, that would break her all over again. Maybe worse than the first time. Margaret stood up abruptly, her chair scraping the tile floor behind her. I need air. She stepped outside into the breeze, heart racing, breath shallow. She stared out at the street where buses coughed and honked, where strangers walked without knowing a woman across the glass had just had her world tilted upside down. Caleb followed, slow and careful. Not too close, like a man approaching a deer he didn't want to scare. I have questions, she said, not turning to him. A lot of them. Ask anything, he said. I'll tell you everything I know. Margaret turned and looked at him, not with wonder, not yet, with doubt, with fear. What's your birthday? April 19th, 2005. I was born at St. Jude's Medical, room 206. They told my mom it was a stillbirth. That's what it says in the adoption report. But that hospital closed 2 months later, and the paperwork's full of holes. Margaret went pale. Her lips parted, barely breathing. That was the exact date, the exact room. Her knees felt weak, but she stood firm. She started walking. Fast. Caleb kept pace. I held him, she said, almost whispering. They told me he stopped, breathing 5 minutes later. They took him away and told me he was gone. I never saw him again. There wasn't even a death certificate mailed to me. I thought they were just trying to spare me from the pain. I was 21. Alone. Caleb's voice was quiet. I think someone took advantage of that. I've read about things like this, falsified deaths, babies rerouted into shady adoptions. It happened in hospitals back then. No security cameras, no electronic footprints. Margaret stopped suddenly and turned. So you tracked me down with just a nurse's note and a gut feeling? No, Caleb said. It was more than that. He pulled out a small folded envelope and handed it to her. Inside was a faded letter, handwritten in shaky cursive. Margaret read the signature at the bottom and gasped. Julia Mayfield, she whispered. My midwife? She passed away last year, Caleb said. But before she died, she wrote that. Said she carried guilt for 2 decades, that a healthy baby was sold to a private agency by someone inside the hospital, and she didn't stop it. Margaret read every word like her soul depended on it. Tears slid down her cheeks, silent and hot. I kept it for a long time, Caleb said softly. Didn't know what to do with it. Until 3 weeks ago, when I saw your photo on an alumni newsletter. You were smiling, and I just knew. I knew I had to come. Margaret sank onto a bench, trembling. So now what? She asked. You come back into my life and we pretend we're mother and son like nothing ever happened? Caleb knelt beside her, not forcing anything. Just being there. I don't want to pretend, he said. I just want to know where I came from. If you want to get to know me, great. If not, I'll walk away, and you never have to see me again. But I had to try. I had to give you this truth. She looked at him, her heart aching in places she thought had long since turned to stone. I don't know how to be a mother, she whispered. Not anymore. Not after all this time. Caleb offered the smallest, softest smile. That's okay. I'm still learning how to be a son. It wasn't a perfect moment. It was messy, fragile, full of pain and questions and shaky breaths. But it was real, and for Margaret, that was the first honest thing she'd felt in 20 years. Margaret tried to carry on with life like nothing had happened, but something inside her had shifted. For days after that café meeting, she couldn't focus. Her job at the library felt mechanical. She shelved books, greeted patrons, smiled when she needed to. But her thoughts never left Caleb. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw that folded letter, heard his voice. Felt that unspoken maybe tugging at the edge of her chest. She told no one, not her sister, not her co-workers, not even her therapist. What would she say? The son I was told died at birth is alive? And he found me? Who would believe her? Who could understand what it did to a mother to suddenly be handed 20 years back? But the memories came back anyway. The smell of baby shampoo, the shape of tiny fingers wrapped around hers, the nights she sat awake in the dark wondering if there had been a mistake, if maybe, just maybe, and then guilt came crashing down. Because when she looked at Caleb, his quiet confidence, his kindness, she felt proud, but also ashamed. How could she accept his love now when she hadn't fought harder then? Even if she was lied to. Hadn't she believed too easily? One Sunday afternoon, Caleb texted, Hey, I was wondering if you wanted to come to my open. Mike Knight. I'm reading something I wrote. No pressure, just thought I'd ask. She stared at the message for 10 minutes. Then typed, I'd love to. The bar was a small corner space off Broad Street with exposed brick and mismatched chairs. Caleb stood on stage behind a single mic, holding a crumpled paper in his hand. When he spoke, Margaret felt the floor shift. It's about questions, he said, the kind that stay with you for years, like, where do I come from? Who chose my name? Did someone hold me before they gave me away? And then he read a poem. Simple, unpolished, but raw. Lines like, I was born in silence, raised in shadows, but there's a light I never stopped looking for. I dreamed her face long before I saw it. Maybe love comes late, but maybe late is still love. Tears streamed down her face. She left before he could see. The next day, Caleb sent another text. You were there. I felt it. Even if I didn't see you. Thank you. But just as Margaret began opening up, a wave of doubt returned. One night she pulled out the letter again, reread it for the 10th time. Something about the handwriting nagged her, so she did what any suspicious heart would. She checked it. Compared it with a signed recipe card Julia Mayfield had sent her in a Christmas card back in 2006. The handwriting didn't match. Her hands trembled. She called the adoption agency listed in Caleb's papers. The line went dead. No such agency existed anymore. No trace in the online registry. Nothing about a Sunlight Adoptions ever being real. The next week, she avoided Caleb's messages. She told herself it was caution, but it felt like betrayal. Then, 2 days later, he showed up at the library, not loud, not demanding, just holding a manila folder. I think I messed up, he said quietly. He handed her the folder. Inside, 3 photos. One of his adoptive mother, dead now, he said, and one of her holding a baby outside a clinic in Georgia, and a final one, a scanned birth certificate, not state-issued, just a notarized document with Margaret's name listed in faded ink. I don't know who lied, Caleb said, but I know I wasn't trying to lie to you. She said nothing. I can leave, he added. If this hurts more than it helps. Margaret sat down slowly, staring at the photos. No, she whispered. Don't leave. Just give me time to breathe. Her hands trembled as she reached for his. I don't know if I'm your mother yet, she whispered. But I do know you've already cracked something open in me that I thought was dead. Caleb nodded. His eyes shone. And that night, Margaret finally let herself cry for the boy she lost, and the man she might just be beginning to love. The wind had just started to pick up when Margaret pulled into the parking lot outside Caleb's poetry workshop. The building was nothing special, an old converted church with chipped paint and a squeaky door that stuck halfway open. But to her, it felt like walking into a world she'd been locked out of for 2 decades. She hadn't told Caleb she was coming. Something in her gut told her to just show up, to stop overthinking, to stop hiding. Inside, a small group of young adults sat in a circle on beanbags and folding chairs. The room smelled like coffee and printer ink. Caleb stood at the front, sleeves rolled to his elbows, reading something off a yellow legal pad. He didn't see her right away. He was mid-sentence, speaking softly but clearly, when his eyes found her. He faltered, just for a second, but then something steadied in him. He smiled. It wasn't the grin of a performer spotting a fan. It was something gentler, raw, human, like someone seeing sunrise after weeks of gray. After the session, he walked toward her slowly. No rush, no pressure, just presence. I wasn't sure you'd come, he said. I wasn't sure either, she replied, voice soft but anchored. But I think I wanted to stop running. They walked outside into the cold. Neither said much for a minute. The city hummed in the distance. Leaves scraped across the sidewalk. Then Margaret reached into her coat pocket and handed him something. A tiny box. Caleb blinked, confused, then opened it slowly. Inside, a silver chain with a small copper pendant. It's not much, she said, but it was my grandmother's, and I kept it all these years thinking maybe one day I'd give it to my child. I guess I just didn't know when or if I'd get that chance. Caleb didn't speak. He just stared at it. Then he nodded, slow and deep. Do you want to come meet my friends? He asked. It's pizza night. We're Doing bad karaoke after, she chuckled. I haven't sung in front of anyone since 1998. That's perfect, he grinned. Neither have they. That night, something shifted. Not with grand declarations, not with DNA tests or dramatic reunions, just with laughter, with off-key singing, with one badly timed dance move that sent soda flying across the room. It wasn't neat, it wasn't cinematic, but it was real. Over the next few weeks, Margaret began to stitch her life into his. She met his roommates, saw the corner of the apartment where he kept her old letters, now carefully laminated in sleeves. He visited the library, helped her lift boxes, gave kids impromptu poetry lessons when the reading room got too quiet. They talked about everything and nothing. Childhood stories, favorite snacks, songs that made them cry. But the true breakthrough came quietly. One Sunday morning, they were sitting on a park bench, sipping coffee, wrapped in scarves. Do you think we'll ever really know the whole truth? She asked. Caleb stared at the pond. A duck quacked in the distance. Maybe not, he said. But we know this is real. You, me, right now. She looked at him, and for the first time in 20 years, she said the words that had lived in her. Chest all this time, words she had never dared speak. I love you, Caleb, whether I raised you or not. I love you. He didn't rush to answer, just took her hand, held it. I know, he whispered. I love you too, Margaret. And that moment, quiet, small, utterly ordinary, felt bigger than anything, because sometimes the real breakthroughs don't come with trumpets. They come with healing in silence, with two people choosing each other despite everything, and they come with hope, real, grounded hope that maybe broken stories can still end in light. The winter melted into early spring before either of them noticed. What once felt like an impossible tangle of years, guilt and silence had piece by piece begun to unravel. Slowly, naturally, without force. Caleb didn't call her Mom. He didn't need to. The word wasn't as important as the connection they were rebuilding. He called her Margaret, and when he introduced her to people, he'd say, This is Margaret. She's someone I'm still getting to know, but she's someone who matters. That was enough. At the library, Margaret kept working her quiet hours, but there was a difference in her now. The weariness in her shoulders had lifted. She smiled more, even laughed. When kids came in asking for help, she knelt down, not just as a librarian, but as someone who now understood what it meant to lose and rediscover hope. Caleb would drop by on Thursdays, the one day they both had free time. He'd bring coffee and sit in the reading corner, scribbling poems in his leather-bound journal. Sometimes he'd read her one. Not all of them. Just the ones he said felt like us. One Thursday, he handed her a folded piece of paper. No title, no introduction. Just the words, there are stories that start with birth and others that start with absence. But the best ones, the ones that survive, are the ones we choose to keep writing. She didn't say anything at first, just held the paper to her chest. Then came summer. The community center where Caleb taught was doing a fundraiser, and they asked him if he had family to invite. He hesitated, then smiled. Yeah, he said. I do. Margaret stood in the front row that night as he performed his set. Original poems that pulsed with truth, healing, and the quiet thunder of a heart that had been broken and stitched. Back stronger. When he finished, the applause came hard and fast. But Caleb didn't look at the crowd. He looked at her and mouthed, "Thank you." Afterward, as they walked to the car under the soft glow of streetlights, she reached for his arm. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Anything. If you ever want to know more about the adoption. The why? The how? I'll tell you, but I won't force it. I just want you to have answers if you're ready." Caleb paused. I will, he said. Someday. But for now, I think I just want more days like this. They got in the car, drove with the windows down, let the breeze carry the silence that no longer hurt. Weeks turned into months. Life didn't. Suddenly turned perfect. There were hard days, awkward moments, times when Margaret still questioned if she deserved this second chance. But the difference was, she no longer faced those doubts alone. Caleb was in her life. Not as a project, not as a wound to fix, but as a living, breathing reminder that even the most broken beginnings can lead to beautiful middles, and maybe someday, when they were ready, even a shared ending. But for now, the present was enough. It was enough to sit across from each other, at a café table on a Tuesday afternoon, sipping coffee and sharing a slice of cherry pie. Enough to exchange old memories and build new ones. Enough to know that, after all this time, they had found their way back, not to the past, but to each other. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to smash that thumbs up and hit subscribe for more unforgettable, emotional, and viral true stories. We want to hear from you. Drop a comment and tell us, where in the world are you watching from?